Welcome to the Thrive Careers Podcast, the ultimate guide to turning career confusion into clarity and success. I am your host, Olajumoke Fatuki, a career strategist who's been where you are, navigating the highs, the lows, and pivots of building a fulfilling career. Whether you're stuck in a job that doesn't spark joy, you're feeling lost in your job search, or you're simply ready to level up and thrive, you have come to the right place. Through my own career journey, from uncertainty to reinvention, I have been able to uncover the secrets to building confidence, unlocking opportunities, and finding purpose in the workplace. And now, I'm here to share those game-changing strategies with you. Each episode is packed with actionable tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you land your dream job, ace your goals, and design a career you truly love. So, grab a notebook or just hit play. It's time to embrace your potential, take charge, and thrive. Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Thrive Careers Podcast, the show where we help professionals land their dream jobs and build thriving careers. My name is Olajumoke Fatuki, and today we are diving into one of the most critical aspects of job searching: how to craft a winning resume and stand out in today's competitive job market. Our guest today is Chantel Smith, a resume and career branding expert with years of expertise helping professionals refine their resumes, optimize their LinkedIn profiles, and position themselves for career success. She has worked with job seekers across industries, helping them secure opportunities and advance their careers. Today, Chantel will share insider tips on the most common resume mistakes, the key elements of a standout resume, and how job seekers, especially newcomers to Canada, can tailor their resumes to meet employer expectations. So, if you've been struggling to get interviews, this episode is packed with actionable advice just for you. Chantel, welcome to the Thrive Careers Podcast.
Thank you so much, Ola. Thank you for having me.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what inspired you to start helping newcomers and to start helping people with their resumes, with their job search, and stuff like that?
What inspired me was there's someone in my close circle who lost their job through layoff a couple years ago. Before this person's experience, I also was struggling to find a job that I love. So when this person got this terrible news, I could see her struggle, and it just made me think that I had all of this knowledge, both as a candidate, as a hiring manager, because I've hired people before. And I just thought that, I wanted to help her, but I also knew there were so many other people who were laid off, or they were also or unhappy with their jobs, and they're really looking to find something else. So that's kind of like my origin story.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, so we just move into the icebreaker question for today. Are you ready?
I guess.
All right, so Chantel, do you want to tell us, if your career journey were to be a movie, what would the title be and why?
I think the name of the movie would be Twists and Turns.
Okay, can you tell us why?
If I reflect back on my career, I've been working for almost 25 years now in my field of marketing communications. When you first start out, you just cannot predict where you're going to end up 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And, it's ups and downs, and it's never a trajectory in a straight line. It's very like this, and that's what's been like for me. So I feel like that title is
perfect.
Yeah.
Twists and turns, basically being able to go with the flow during the ups, during the downs, you just keep moving. All right. So we're getting now into the core discussion for today. The first question: what is the most common mistakes job seekers make with their resumes, and how can they fix it?
The most common mistake that I've seen is people do not customize their resume for each opportunity that they pitch to or pitch for. in my experience as a hiring manager, I've seen a lot of generic resumes or almost worse, generic cover letters, which we can get into if you want, but you get the sense, particularly if you're looking at applications that come through LinkedIn, that people are just kind of throwing their resumes at anyone who's hiring that day or that week. And as a hiring manager, you can feel that. You feel there's no care that's been taken into the application from the candidates. So I would say that's a very common thing that I see.
Generic resumes, not, tailoring their resumes to fit the different jobs that they're applying for, right?
Yeah, because if, for example, you're applying for a job as a, financial analyst, for example, each company that recruits for that role, they might be looking for different things. They might be using different systems, different softwares. They might be looking for different type of person in terms of personality traits, skills and abilities. This is where customization really plays a role because, just because this one institution is looking for one financial analyst doesn't necessarily mean the other one is looking for the same kind of financial analyst, if you know what I mean. It's not just about, level of seniority. There's a lot of nuances in terms of what hiring managers want, and which I know can be frustrating for candidates, but that's just the way it is.
There's a book that I read sometimes back in my career. The title of that book is Getting a Job is a Job.
It is. It really, really is. Yeah.
Exactly. So gone are the days of generic resumes. One size fits all. You apply for every job, even though it's the same job title, like you said, but the nuances can be different from organization to organization. So tailor your resume is the takeaway. So take that question a bit further, like a follow-up question. Do you think that there is a common misconception about resume writing that people need to unlearn?
Well, I think one common misconception is that you have to be very good at writing in general to produce a good resume. And obviously, that skill helps a lot. But I think that with the advent of AI and tools like ChatGPT, there are tools out there that you can use to make your writing better. I'll give like a very, very granular, concrete example. If you write a paragraph about an work experience that you have and you're not sure it's that great, you can actually throw it into ChatGPT and ask it to rewrite it or make it better. You could be surprised with the results. And I always throw caution, just make sure that you check what it writes for you, make sure it's accurate and that it's in your voice. But I know some people are intimidated by the act of writing. And, when you're writing your resume, you are selling yourself, you are marketing yourself. And most people are scared to do that and they don't know how to do that. And it's intimidating. So there's kind of like this double-edged sword, the act of writing, but you're also you have to pitch yourself, right? In a resume, you have to put yourself forward in the best possible light so that someone wants to interview you.
One key thing that you also highlighted there is the ability to leverage technology. So you don't have to know how to write. It's good, but you can also leverage technology. And you also provided a balance right there to say, so AI can give you the first draft, but you also have to own it, make it sound like you, polish it to reflect your own persona and bring everything that makes you different from the next candidates into the first draft that AI can provide for you. I'm also thinking, is there any chance that formatting and layout still makes any difference today?
They certainly do. If you are submitting your resume to a large organization, I'm talking Google or Meta or any financial institution, for example, they all use what they call ATSs, so it's applicant tracking system. And what happens is when you submit your resume to an email address, it is not human eyeballs that see your resume first. It's this system, this machine really, that scans each resume it receives. And it looks for specific keywords and also specific formats. So if you don't have the keywords that they are looking for, that they've identified for that position, or if the format of your resume is not clean and simple, your resume probably will be rejected and will never be seen by, a human hiring manager or human resources person. So format is really important because, on the other hand, if you're submitting your resume to I don't know, someone like me where I don't have an ATS at work because we're too small of an organization to afford that. Hiring managers don't have a lot of time, and you have to keep in mind that we're getting dozens, if not hundreds of resumes for one role. We are scanning resumes very, very quickly to see, hey, this one looks good, this one looks less relevant, this one looks a bit too complicated to understand because there's graphics and pictures and columns and there's all kinds of things. That can discourage a hiring manager pretty quickly from looking at your resume. So
I think you also mentioned something right there that I want us to dive further into. ATS, technology keeps changing our world, and there's really nothing we can do about it other than to adapt the applicant tracking system. How do people ensure that they pass the ATS test in terms of the keywords? I feel like, that might be big for some people. If you can break it down further, what you mean by having relevant keywords on your resume to ensure that your resume passes the ATS test and you even get a chance of getting into the hands of the recruiter.
I know that for a lot of candidates, it's a really tough nut to crack because you're not dealing with a human being, you're dealing with a machine, and who can control that? I would say the best tip I could give to job seekers is actually read the job posting before you apply. Read it carefully. To make sure that it's a job you actually are interested in, because otherwise you're wasting your time applying for it. But also to see which keywords come up in the job posting. I would look at the skills required section, the main paragraph where they're talking about kind of like a more summary of the role in question, and see if any words come up that are repeated or seem important for that hiring manager. And I would just highlight those. That's what I was doing when I was last looking for a job. I just highlight or circle and see if you have those attributes and those skills and experiences. And if you do, you should take those very same keywords and put them in your resume, specifically in your summary, which we can talk about. And if you have those keywords in your resume, the ATS will pick that up. And I've seen it happen for myself and others. You submit a resume into this nebulous galaxy. You're like, I don't know where it's going to end up, if anywhere. But, using those keywords in my resume, really, it helps. I would say that's the best way to go about it. Otherwise, the system will just not pick up your resume and they'll pick up someone else's who actually has those keywords.
Thank you for helping to break that down. Exactly how people can, get those relevant keywords and highlight them on their resume by actually reading job posting. A lot of people don't do that, and it's a good thing that you call their attention to that you read the job posting, you read the job description and highlight. I've not looked at it from that angle before. Those words that keeps coming over and over, that means they're very important, to the hiring manager. So you then pick on all of that and incorporate it into your own resume. And that's exactly what it means to have relevant keywords. So I hope that this helps to demystify the concept for people who have been asking me. There you have it, listeners. You now understand what it means to put relevant keywords in your resume and where to find them. Okay, before we move to the next question, so you mentioned summary, and I wanted us to also build a bit on that. Just touch on what it means to have that summary on the resume and how to have one that is captivating.
For those who may not know, a summary is a very short paragraph, like 4 to 5 lines at most, below, your name and your contact information, the very top of your resume, that summarizes what kind of a professional you are and what you can bring to the table for the company you're applying to. It is one of the best places, if not the best places in your resume to insert the keywords that we've been talking about. For example, I don't know, we're going back to the financial analyst who's looking for a job. I'm assuming financial analysts have a certain set of skills. And so you would put those keywords in your summary. Experienced financial analyst, look for an opportunity and X institution, and then you would kind of go on with just a very brief summary of your skills. And this is content that you would not necessarily see in your work experience section or your technical skills section, that's separate, or your education. I would say that I've seen a shift in the last few years. I don't know if it was triggered by the pandemic or not, but there are more and more companies that are divesting themselves of the requirement of cover letters for their job applications, which means that candidates just have to submit a resume, which is great because it's less work for you as a candidate. The problem with that is that in a cover letter, you can really tell your story. and present yourself in kind of in a different format, as if you were talking to someone. But if you don't have to submit a cover letter or you choose not to, the next place where you can really pitch yourself is the summary on your resume. So I would keep that in mind. Just a tangent word of advice. If an institution is asking for a cover letter, you should submit one, because if they didn't want to read your cover letter, they wouldn't be asking for it. So you should write that cover letter and send it to them.
A lot of people these days feel like cover letters are not needed. But like you said, if an organization has requested for it, ensure to give it to them. It's like the best place to express yourself. The summary section is another good place, 4 to 5 lines, to really express yourself, your value proposition, and what you bring to the table. All right, so moving on, let's talk a little bit about, the people aspect. Let's bring real life examples. So, can you share an example with us of a client you've worked with whose career was transformed after, you worked on their resume?
I was working with a man a couple of months ago now who came from another country. He was struggling to find a position in his field here in Canada. And he found out the hard way that the format of his resume from his country, his native country, just wasn't accepted here in Canada. It just wasn't a format that hiring managers here are used to or accept. So I helped him reformat his resume, and it wasn't rocket science, but it was just something new that he had to learn and be exposed to. And like my advice to newcomers is, to make sure that you have the right format. I know in some countries they refer to resumes as curriculum vitae. Here in Canada, a CV is actually that's what academics submit when they're looking for a job, like as a professor or something like that. But in a regular, for-profit or non-profit organization, it's called a resume. So just these little details that make a big difference in terms of how you communicate with a hiring manager or a company can make a big difference.
Fantastic. For that transformation that your clients experienced, were there other things that they did beyond resume, like in terms of networking, LinkedIn optimization?
Yeah. I think that's like the other 50%. I know what you're trying to get at. It's really, really important. Networking is huge. And I think everyone should be on LinkedIn. I mean, there might be some sectors of the economy where maybe it's less relevant, but certainly for myself, marketing communications, almost any industry, I know teachers who are on LinkedIn. But I would highly recommend, if you're not on LinkedIn as a job candidate, you should be. And you should connect with literally everyone that you know. It doesn't necessarily have to be just former colleagues or bosses or anything like that. It can actually be your friends. It can be neighbors, because the thing with networking is you never know who they know. That's what networking is about. I think that we could have a whole other episode about LinkedIn optimization, because it really is a bit of a beast, but it's a wonderful way. And also it's a great way to find job postings. There are a lot of job postings on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has made it very easy to apply through the easy apply button, which I discourage, but there's a lot of jobs on there, and it's a big hive of activity.
So it's not just going to be resume alone, networking, being active on LinkedIn. All right. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. So the job market is crowded, especially today's competitive job market. Should professionals still prioritize skills, achievements, or experience on their resumes?
I think that for hiring manager, speaking for myself personally, and I know others would agree, is that I think we're interested in what you've done in your previous positions, because we make the connection that, hey, if this person was able to do X in that job, they can do the same in this job that I need to fill, and they might be able to do even better because they have more experience. So I would suggest, in the work experience section, what I've seen a lot, unfortunately, is people just list the tasks that they've done in their previous job or their current job, depending on the situation. I would really strongly recommend candidates focus on listing their achievements for that position. And if they can quantify that, all the better. That's easy to do if you're in marketing or sales or finance, maybe less obvious in other fields. If you cannot quantify with numbers or statistics, make sure to put some feedback that you've received, because FYI, you should be looking for feedback on your performance at work. If you're not getting it from people directly, you should seek that out to see how you're doing. But I think it's really important to show the hiring manager what you're capable of doing, which is different than the task that you were given, So
that's still very much important, because that was my question. Should they still prioritize such things? And you've been able to, justify that instead of, just a list of responsibilities, showcase your achievements, because that's what tells the hiring managers that if you've done it before, then, you're able to do it in the current role, as against what most of us are used to, of just listing, our task, the responsibilities on our resume. So as against having that, having achievements. And also you said something very critical, that people should, seek for feedback. And I feel like if you could help us touch more a bit on that as well. How can people seek for feedback on their role? Because some people are just used to, as long as I'm getting my job done, whether that my line manager or the people that I work with say anything about it or not, it doesn't matter, as long as I get my paycheck at the end of the day. So why should they really, seek feedback on their job? Why is that important?
Well, I think, for yourself personally as an employee, I think you want to know where you stand with the organization. People do get fired for poor performance. So if you're not performing well, you need to know so that you can correct that and, keep your job. That's the obvious reason. But I think it's important to seek feedback because you want to build on your achievements, right? Like you want to have some momentum in your career, no matter where you are in your career, whether you're starting or you're where I am with, decades of experience. And it's just very motivating to get feedback. And even if you get negative feedback, hopefully constructive feedback, there's lessons to be gained from those, from those pieces of feedback. You also have to keep in mind that, not everything that we do in our job works out. Sometimes, we don't do a great job. And that's okay. Not everyone has great days all the time. And I think it's important to analyze the feedback that you get, both negative and positive, and see if there's any patterns. This sounds a bit cheesy, but I have a little fan mail sub inbox in my Gmail at work. So whenever I get people commenting on my work or whatever, I just throw it in there. If you're having a bad day, it's nice to go back to that fan mail inbox and you see actually, you're actually a decent professional, you're doing a good job. But it also gives you a track record of feedback and you can follow up with people. If they say, that was a good job, you can say, well, what was it about it that I did that you appreciated? Drill a little bit deeper into how people are feeling about the work that you've done. And it's really, really helpful to know that. And you know where your strengths are, and you also know where your weaknesses are, and then you can work on your weaknesses.
Very important for you to know where you stand. That's the major reason, for asking for those feedback and tying it back to where we started off from. That's another thing, you can also showcase on your resume. If you've had, some of those quality feedback that you can also showcase as someone who is able to deliver on the job and deliver exceptionally well. All right, so now let's talk about newcomers in Canada. Many newcomers struggle with resume formatting, Canadian employer expectations, how to frame their international experience in a way that resonates with the Canadian employers. So what advice would you give to newcomers in Canada to adapt their resumes, to fit the Canadian job market?
I would say to newcomers that the first thing they should do is go to an employment agency. I can't remember what the name of the entity here is for the federal government in Canada, but they have resources for job seekers and they're well aware of the challenges that lie ahead for newcomers that come to this country. And you can also speak to someone like me or other career or resume specialists, and very, very quickly you're going to be, steered in the right direction in terms of the format and anything else that needs to be tweaked so that you present yourself in the best possible light to hiring managers. So I would just seek some advice about that. And there are lots of people out there that can help you. That
was my next question, but you already covered it. Do they need to use recruiters or, Should networking also be part of their job search strategy? Should they seek career coaches who can guide them? And I think that pretty much explains it. So there you have it, dear newcomers in Canada. Look for the people who have the experience, and how resumes in this climb works. All right, so this particular question is very dear to my heart because I found myself, along this line some years ago. And I'd really like to hear what your own perspective is. If someone is revisiting their resume after a long gap, what should they focus on first? How do they address the career gaps? Because it can really be a challenge. What strategies can they employ? How do they highlight their strengths despite a career break?
That's a great question. I can relate to that personally. I took a 5-year maternity leave to have and raise my children, who are now older, teenagers. So I actually have been through this myself personally, and it can be challenging. Just a couple of things. I think first, you have to decide if you want to reinsert yourself back into the kind of career you had before your break. If you do, then you just have to kind of revisit your resume, take the dust off, and refresh it. Maybe you didn't update it after you left for your break. If you did not, then you obviously should. As for addressing the gap, I would just be honest with hiring managers about that. They know that, some women take some time off to be with their children. That can be easily explained. It's nothing to be ashamed of. You can just say it. It doesn't make you less of a competent professional. What I would say to people who have a gap and who want to stay in their career is make sure you keep up with the trends in your career and your particular market, because things move at a really fast pace. I don't know if we were talking about AI 5 years ago. I don't remember if we did, but it feels really new to me. And now it's all over the place. So it's just things like that. It really depends on what kind of new career you want. You may have to go back to school. If you do, then you need those new credentials, right? You need that diploma, that certificate to put on your resume. So you got to take the time to acquire that. It really depends on the situation. But I would say first, try to see what experience you've acquired and see how you can transfer some, if not all of those skills into your new career. I know a lot of people out of their break, they decide to become entrepreneurs and start their own businesses. That's a whole other thing because you're working for yourself. So, that would be my advice.
All right. So I have a follow-up question to that as well. How can they leverage things like volunteering, freelancing, or certifications to bridge some of those gaps?
I would include those things in your resume if they're relevant for the job that you're applying for. Volunteer work is very valuable, not just for the organization that you're serving, but it's also valuable to you because you probably will acquire skills in that volunteer position that you wouldn't have acquired otherwise in a paid position, right? That's been my experience anyway. So you should put those down in a resume. And, if there's some skills you acquired in those other activities, you can put those in your summary, for example. I would suggest you have a separate section for volunteer work, but I would not discount those experiences if you feel they're relevant for the job that you're posting.
So I wanted us to sort of tie it into the people who are addressing career gaps. So that question is like an offshoot that if, one of the things that they can do to also stay ahead whilst they are taking a career break is to also leverage like volunteering, freelancing. That's like
Yeah, I feel like those experiences are a great bridge between two kind of, paid positions. They keep you busy, one. They also keep you kind of current and relevant in the job marketplace. And organizations are appreciative of that. Volunteers all have a great reputation. So it's not a bad thing to have on your resume, but they are great bridge makers, I feel, between two positions. And, they keep you in touch with society and what's going on in society. There's only so much that you can glean from what you see online or in the news. You really have to get out and muck about with organizations who need help.
Thank you so much, Chantel. We've come to the end of our 5 core questions for today. But before we wrap up, let's have some fun with a quick round of rapid fire questions. Just say the first thing that comes to mind. Don't overanalyze it. Let's just have some fun. Of course, if you want to explain a bit, it's fine, but just, keep it simple. So one resume mistake that instantly turns off employers, what would that be?
Me, it's spelling mistakes.
Spelling mistakes.
Yes. Yeah, it means someone didn't proofread their resume.
All right, listeners, I hope you can hear it. No spelling mistakes, because in today's world, there are no excuses. There are tons of platforms that you can use to proofread your resume and ensure that there are no errors. So, yeah. Second question, what's a must-have resume section that job seekers often overlook?
I would say the summary. It's either overlooked, or it's too long, or it's not compelling enough. It's often the Achilles heel in the resumes that I've seen.
So if you weren't in your current field, what career would you have pursued?
I think I would be happy owning a bookstore.
A bookstore. Amazing. Oh, wow. That means you have a large collection of books. You're a book lover.
It's not large enough.
All right, we get it. It means you really love books and you're still acquiring more. Okay, one day I hope I get to visit your library. All right, thank you so much, Chantel. This has been an amazing conversation. You've given our listeners so much clarity, on crafting a strong resume and what it takes to stand out in today's competitive job market. But before we finally let you go, where can our listeners connect with you, and how can they learn more about your work and what you do?
Well, thanks for asking. I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, so you should look for me, Chantel Sneath, on LinkedIn. You can follow me. I've got a free resource, which is a checklist, a resume checklist. You just run down the list, make sure you have all those things on your resume, so you can start with that. And I post every day with some tips and tricks for making your job seeking a little bit easier.
All right, so what are your final words for our listeners, to job seekers, corporate professionals, the different audience that we serve? What would be your final words to them on this episode?
Well, I think my final piece of advice, and this is coming from, I'm wearing my marketing hat right now, is that resumes are actually a marketing piece. It's really up to you to use it, wisely, but people should treat their resume as such. It is literally something that represents them and sells them, good or bad. And so I feel people need to think of it in that way. And I think that shift in mentality really can help to conquer a hiring manager's heart. And if I may, a second piece of advice, I would really strongly encourage people, job seekers, to network. I have a saying, I did not invent this, but it's not what you know, it's who you know. And sometimes if you're connected with the right person, that right person can open a door for you, and you're in a different place in your career and your life. And so I really encourage people to network and get to know as many people as you can.
It is not what you know, but who you know. What a way to bring this to an end. Thank you so much, Chantel, for being on the Thrive Careers podcast. And to all our listeners, if you found today's episode valuable, do not forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and be sure to share this with someone who needs it. Until I come your way again next time, keep thriving in your career. Thank you. All right, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much, Chantel.
Thank you so much, Ola. Bye-bye.
And that's it for today's episode of Thrive Careers Podcast. I am Olajumoke Fatoki, reminding you that no matter where you are in your career, you have the power to rewrite your story. If you've enjoyed today's insights, do not forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's ready to thrive. If you have questions or topics you would like for me to cover, let's connect. I would love to hear from you. Remember, clarity creates confidence, and confidence leads to success. And until I come your way again next time, stay inspired and keep thriving.